Welcome to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. Each week, we bring you insight, analysis, interviews, and our predictions for the week's matchups around the Northwest Georgia area. Here are your hosts.
And your hosts are here, and we're glad to be here. It is time for another episode of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. I'm Matt Davis, and I'm alongside Ian Griffin, my partner in crime, and we're about to do some picking and a grinning. We're going to have a good time, and the most grinning taking place in the room today is going to be from the other side of the table. We'll put his mug on the screen right now. He was the champion last week, rebounding from a 1-6 week in week one to go 7-0, baby. Way to go,
yeah.
Ian Griffin.
Yeah.
That's much better.
I needed it. That's more like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've got ourselves a ball game, as they say, because you went 7-0. I was 6-1, which is not terrible, and we have a one-game lead for me. I am currently 9-5, and you are 8-6. So,
All right, bounce back.
Yeah. So we've got a bunch of games to pick today, and I do think there's possibility of some differences in there.
Sure.
There's some great matchups for week 3, as we've seen in weeks 1 and 2. So pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the season goes on, you learn more and more about these teams. It's tough sledding early in the season because they've put in the work in the offseason, but until you get out there under the Friday night lights, it's just a lot of unknowns.
Well, Ian, let's dive in. We'll go ahead and mention the matchups that we've got coming up in our pick section, which will start here in just a few minutes. But we'll run down the slate of games. Then we'll also kind of talk a little bit about last week's action, which I know we'll filter in as we talk about the matchups for this week for those teams that did play last week. But we're going to talk about Unity going to Central Christian to take on the Crusaders. It'll be the Tryon Bulldogs going down to Temple, Georgia to take on the Tigers. Calhoun Yellow Jackets at Westminster. Really interesting matchup there. Cass Colonels are taking on the Adairsville Tigers this weekend. You've got the Model Blue Devils at Coosa Eagles, so a local showdown there. I'm sure there's going to be a big crowd there for that one. It'll be super exciting. Ridgeland Panthers coming to town. The Darlington Tigers finally get to be at home for a game after 2 weeks on the road. And then you have the Christian Heritage Lions down in Lindale taking on the Dragons, who won a game last week, even up their season record to 1-1. Trying to grab some momentum. And then you've got a showdown that people have circled this time of year long before the season starts. The Carrollton Trojans are coming to town to Barron Stadium to take on the Rome Wolves. We've got a full slate of exciting matchups this weekend.
Yeah, some tough picks here and some tough tests for our area teams as non-region play. It's close to expiring here. Only a few more weeks, and everybody's going to be jumping into to region play. But some great matchups, and it's going to be fun to see how we pick them.
All right, before we take our first break, let's kind of recap last week. And Ian, I'm going to get your take. What are some of the matchups last week, the scores that really caught your attention?
Well, congrats to the Pepperell Dragons. That was a big win on the road against Adairsville. They had to come back to do it. This is a team that had a lot of close losses last year, so I feel like that's a big win for Pepperell as far as the psyche of the team after losing to Pickens in week 1 to find their way back and win that game on the road. Aaron Avery's our Murchie team didn't get off the start they wanted to against Ridgeland at home, but it'll be interesting to see how the Indians do going forward as well. Rockmart had the big win in week 1, but went up against a juggernaut in Cartersville, and that tells me Cartersville's exactly who we think they are, because that's a good Rockmart team, and they went in there and won that one handily. And you say that, and then watch Rockmart go compete for another state championship. It's going to happen. You book it. But it was a good week of action. As far as the Darlington Tigers are concerned, they went on the road against the North Cobb Christian team that was really, really tough. And you look at that final score, it does not tell the story of the game whatsoever. Darlington was in that thing into the fourth quarter, and ball didn't bounce their way late, but no shame and a loss to a good North Cobb team.
Well, it's been a great start to the season, and thankfully we were able to bounce back last week with our picks. It was much better. So We'll see what happens this week. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We've kind of recapped last week a little bit. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're just going to dive right into our slate of games, starting with the Unity Lions hitting the road to take on Central Christian. And that all happens when we come back on this episode of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. Can you believe it? It's time to pick Week 3 games. We'll return.
Are you shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Riverside Auto Group has a location to meet your needs. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, Riverside Nissan in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
Good evening and welcome back, everyone, to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, our Week 3 edition. We're excited to have you with us. And, Matt, let's dive into these ball games.
Let's do it, man. We're going to talk about our first matchup. This is going to be the Unity Christian School Lions hitting the road to take on Central Christian, the Crusaders. Both teams come into the matchup, Ian, with a 2-0 record, so identical records. The Lions have pitched 2 shutouts to start the season, outscoring their first 2 opponents 91-0. 2 shutouts. That's pretty rare in this 9-man football. So a tip of the cap there to the Lions for their start of the season. Crusaders, similar experience to start the year. They've whooped up on a couple of opponents to the tune of 92-14. So this is one of those games, and I'll let you have the first pick here. It should be, from what it looks like on paper, a pretty evenly matched contest here.
Yeah, I think this will be the toughest test of the season thus far for Unity, with Central Christian, again, off to a good start. You got 2 undefeated teams here. Both of them have put up a bunch of points, but how impressive is it? 2 shutouts. You mentioned it. 2 shutouts. Unity's yet to give up a point. When we talked to Coach Humphreys, he talked about how much they emphasize tackling in practice, and that they drive that home and they hit every day, and they must be tackling tremendously well in open field, because this is 9-man football. There's a lot more space out there for your skill players to operate. So I like Miles Schwartz and Coach Hump. I believe in what they've got going out there. I think they go on the road and they keep this train rolling. I think they go 3-0.
Well, this is not going to be a shutout for either team. This is one of those games I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of scoring. It's going to look like a score that you expect to see out of this brand of football. But I'm with you. Now that the young quarterback for Unity has a couple of games under his belt, the nerves probably are not as bad when he gets out on the field, even though this one's on the road, and feels a little bit more comfortable, and the guys around him feel confident what he can do. So I think they're going to score some points. And at the end of the day, I'm rolling with the Lions with this one too. So right out of the gate, we picked one game. No differences so far.
All right, we'll see if we have one in this next game.
Well, we might. We'll see what happens.
Who knows?
I kind of doubt it, but we're going to find out. It's the Trine Bulldogs. They're going to Temple to take on the Tigers. Trine is 1-1 on the season. Temple is 2-0. Series history, Trine leads at 6-1. The Bulldogs won 42-15 last season. What you think?
My goodness. Well, last season there were 18 guys on that Trine team that are not there this year. And Trine, look, they kept it competitive with a pretty good Lafayette team. And last week, we all know it's tough to play at Dade County, but Trine found a way to win that one 28-6. So I think Coach Patrick is going to have his boys ready to roll. But this Temple team, we saw them last year, super athletic, got a lot of talent returning from last year's squad. They are averaging over 60 points a game thus far. I mean, they are lighting the scoreboard up. And if we haven't told you, the visiting stands, a little smelly over there. So
they're built high up, and the reason they're built high up is because it's pretty close to like a sewer or something like that, and it wafts at you a little bit when you're up there.
There's some wafts. So Trine fans, take your nose plugs with you. I think the Bulldogs will be competitive. They'll go out there and play hard, but I'm not going to bet against this Temple team. I have a feeling they're, based on what we saw last year, the growth that we could see from the returning experience that they have versus trying to establish a new set of leadership with all those seniors departing. I'm going to go with Temple.
Man, I happen to agree with you on this one. I think the way that I would describe this Trine Bulldogs team this year is it's a get us while you can kind of season for this team.
You're darn right.
As you pointed out at the start of our conversation, they had so many guys that they had to replace from last year's team that was so successful. And when you've got that many people to replace, you have good players, but it takes a little time to get everybody on the same page and to gel and to kind of replicate what you had been doing and that kind of success. So this team's going to be fine. I just think it's going to take a little time. And when you're going up against a team built like this Temple team with the speed, the size, and not to mention how physical that these guys play, I just think it's going to be a tall order for Trine, especially going on the road to take on this team. You mentioned the two games that Temple won, scoring over 60 points in those games. Now, granted, the two teams they played are a combined 0-4, but I don't care.
Yeah.
When you score 69 and 63 points against teams, you're doing some things right.
Definitely.
And you got some dudes, and we certainly know that because we saw this team play last year. So I'm with you on this one. I'm taking Temple, although I do think that, that this Trine team will compete for a little while. But I think as the game goes on that the Temple Tigers will be able to kind of wear them down. So we agree on that one as well. All right. No matter what, at this point, I'm still going to have a one-game lead. Does that change? Will we have any differences? Let's talk about another game, Ian. It's the Calhoun Yellow Jackets hitting the road to Westminster to take on the Wildcats. Calhoun's played one game. They're 1-0. Wildcats are 2-0. Series history, Calhoun leads at 4-1. Jackets won last season 28-20. This ought to be an outstanding football game. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Westminster's record, and you might think that the Wildcats are going to be outmatched in this one, but this is a proud Westminster program. They play a very tough schedule. They were 5-6 last season. They're 0-2 right now, but they're used to playing quality programs, so they're not going to welcome the Yellow Jackets to their stadium expecting to lose. They're going to go out and feel like they have a chance to win here. But these are the defending state champs. The Jackets, I believe in them. I know they aren't at the Reeve this time around, but I'm going to take Calhoun to win this game.
All right, let's dive into this one a little bit further. Westminster has something this year that they have not had in 33 seasons, since 1992, and that is a new head coach. Jerry Romberg spent 33 seasons at the helm, won a state championship, 7 region titles, and now their coach, I forgot his first name, his last name is Nelson. He came from the Newman School. So he was Arch Manning's coach.
Wow.
And then, of course, it's the same school where the rest of the Mannings went to as well. So a little bit of interesting stuff I was digging up today from the Georgia High School Football Daily. Off to an impressive start, wins in close battles over Lovett and Pace Academy. Calhoun, as we mentioned, 1-0 start, won a title last year. This is a tough early road test for the Jackets.
It is.
But they're a team that makes deep runs into the playoffs every year, and every single year has to play against really tough teams on the road. So I think a team like Calhoun, as well coached as they are, they're the type of team that's ready for these kind of challenges. So I think Westminster's going to get their first loss this year. We agree on this.
Okay.
One, Calhoun.
All right.
I thought we might have a difference there,
Yeah.
but not so. We see it the same.
Yeah,
So let's
I'm
see.
believing in the Jackets on the road.
Well, let's talk about one more game, and then we'll take a break as we are about the midway point. And this one is going to be the Cass Colonels going over to Adairsville to take on the Tigers. Cass is 1-1. Adairsville's 0-2, had a tough start out of the gate. Cass leads the series 34-24, one tie. The Colonels dominated last year 49-0. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adairsville is 0-2. I think they're better than their record might suggest. But this week they get a Cass team, and these two teams have played traditionally close throughout this series. But Cass has really elevated their program more and more each and every year. And I think last year, the loss of Brody McWhorter, you're going to see the benefits this year because a lot of guys had to step in to try to find ways to win, and they did. They were able to make the playoffs even without their leader. And now he's back, and those guys have that experience, and I think it's galvanized this team. I believe in what Coach Gates is doing out there. Daresville gets this one at home, and that might help them stay close for a little while, but in the end, I think Cass is going to be too much.
I agree with you. I think this one's pretty clear cut. You got Mississippi State commit Brody McQuarter at quarterback, had about 300 yards and 4 touchdowns last week against Model. He's got some athletic receivers around him to get the ball to. He's very good at getting the ball to those guys. And you look at a situation here where Daresville's playing up in classification. They're going to win some games this year. The season will improve. Unfortunately, though, I think they're going to start the season 0-3, but that is no knock against Adairsville. It's just that Cass is just that good of a team. And there's not going to be too many teams that you're going to find around the Northwest Georgia area, if any, that have a quarterback that's at the level that Brody McQuarter is. I mean, he's pretty outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else can you say about it? I think Cass wins the game, and that is the 4th game that we're going to pick. We don't have any differences yet, but they're coming. I got a feeling.
All right.
We'll see what happens.
We shall.
Maybe not. Well, we got 3 more games to pick, 1 more to talk about in addition to those 3, and we're going to do that when we come back. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football and our Week 3 edition. We'll return.
Are you shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Riverside Auto Group has a location to meet your needs. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, Riverside Nissan in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
All right. Well, I think I've been tossing it to you to pick them all first so far. I hadn't necessarily been doing that intentionally. So this one I'll make sure to pick before I send it over to you. Just try to keep things a little bit interesting if we can.
Sure.
But this particular game, looking forward to talking about because it's an in-county rivalry between the Model Blue Devils and the Coosa Eagles. Model has not tasted victory this year. They're 0-2. They played 2 really tough teams, Sonoraville in week 1 last week, team we just talked about, Cass Colonels. That was a tall order, obviously. And the Coosa Eagles have played 1 game, and that was a victory this past weekend against Southeast Whitfield, which is a team that's really struggled for a number of years. So, the way I look at this game, Ian, is I feel like Model has an advantage in that they have played 2 games against 2 really tough teams.
True.
And as they say, iron sharpens iron, and you get better through the process of doing that. So I think that helps them here. Coosa, one of the boxes that they check, they've got one of the most talented quarterbacks that's in Rome and Floyd County, no doubt about that. And junior Charlie Canny's a great leader. He's got a good arm. He can get the ball to his guys. They are replacing some key guys from last year's squad, like a lot of teams did going into this year. But I think they're going to be competitive in this game. But at the end of the day, I feel like Model's strength of schedule out of the gate and playing those 2 tough games has seasoned them to where they're going to be prepared for this football game. I think it's going to be a great game, but I look for Model to grind out just a gritty game. It's probably not going to be pretty at times, but I look for them to grind it out here and be very aggressive and find a way to win this game. So I think it's going to be a really physical game. There's going to be no love lost when this football game is over.
Yeah, when you have 2 cross-county teams playing each other, these guys know each other. They're gonna yap. There's gonna be some sparks that fly, but you have to be careful here in this early part of the season to not overbuy when you see results from these games. You mentioned it. Coosa got a resounding victory last week, but they should have won that game big. This is Southeast Whitfield we're talking about. This is a program that struggled. Coosa needed to handle business. They did. So let's check that box. They took care of business. They won big. Model has played 2 tough opponents. Sonoraville's a really good football team. Cass is next level, and they didn't win those games, but I do think that it will make them a better team. That said, I'm going to go X factor here. I agree with everything that you said, but I also agree that a box that Coosa has checked here is Charlie Cannon.
Yeah.
I think he's the difference. I'm going to take the home team to win, and I think Cannon's the reason why.
And I will say, I get that thought process. I don't disagree with it. As a matter of fact, when I first looked at this game, I had Coosa circled. But then I just kept thinking about how tough it has been for Model the last couple of weeks, the fact that they're 0-2, and they need something positive to happen. And I just think this is one of those games that's kind of a coin flip. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I think both of us we're using solid reasoning here. So, but we have a difference.
We do. Yes. We sure do. So that difference could mean, if you get it, that we got a tie ball game, unless we have some more differences. We won't know in this next one because we're going to talk about the Ridgeland Panthers coming to town. The Darlington Tigers have had an interesting situation to start the season.
Sure have.
Obviously, Ian, know this pretty well because we call their games and we've been with them for all of the situation that has unfolded over the course of the first week of the year, and made 2 trips down to Mount Vernon down in Atlanta the first week to get the first game in, which resulted in a 28-26 victory. Darlington was up 28-6 in that game. Mount Vernon stormed back. Darlington thankfully was able to hold on against a really good team, pick up a great road win, very gritty performance. Then the next week they go to North Cobb Christian, play an excellent team. You pointed this out at the beginning of the show. Throw the score out the window. The game was a lot more competitive than you would think by just looking at that score, as North Cobb Christian pulled away late in the game that was a 1-score game late into the third quarter. And so this is a pretty darn good Darlington football team. Ridgeland Panthers come to town. They picked up a victory over Almerchi, which I know you were very thankful for because that's how you got a game on me last week. I picked the Indians to win like they did last year. Didn't happen. But nonetheless, interesting matchup. Darlington gets this win at home, and it's always sweet to be at home, but it's got to be even sweeter this week, huh? Yeah.
After all the adversity they had with the 2 trips to Mount Vernon and then having to go on the road Kennesaw last week, and that was a game Darlington never led, but they tied it up twice, once at 7-7, once at 16-all, and then they kept it within 2 scores and had the ball with a chance to tie a couple of times, and the turnover bug bit them pretty hard, and that really ended up being the difference in the game. But you got a Darlington team that should be healthier this week. Hopefully we see Miles Twyman on the field. I do not have that information, but I have a feeling number 12 is going to be in pads and ready to play Friday night. And that will make a huge difference. But Darlington has weapons. Jace Donaldson went off last week. I mean, the guy had himself a ball game. He was making plays all over the field. Levi Duggan's getting more and more comfortable. We saw the passing game. We only saw 1 pass attempted in week 1. Last week, they put the ball up a good bit. He had some chemistry with his receivers, hit Donaldson for a long touchdown. Nate Konchesky had several receptions in that ball game. So we're seeing Duggan get more and more comfortable. We know Coach Groves is going to be preaching ball security. This Ridgeland team, we saw them last year, and while Darlington absolutely smashed them on the road, you could see glimpses of, they've got athletes. So they're going to come to town, and they're going to be ready to roll. But the Tigers being back at home, and I think getting a little healthier, hopefully getting Twyman back on the field, I like the Tigers' chances to get a win there at the Lakeside.
I do too, and you mentioned Jace Donaldson, the game he had. He had 2 big touchdown runs, caught a touchdown pass, as you mentioned, so he had 3 touchdowns. He was closing in on about 200 yards in the game. And that's kind of been the MO of this Darlington team this year, is scoring on big plays. We've seen it for the first 2 games of the year, and obviously that's not necessarily the strategy. They want to control the tempo of the game with their offense, extend drives, things of that nature. But if it's there, you're going to take it.
Right.
And thankfully for the Tigers, things have opened up, and they've got some guys that if you give them a crease, buddy, they're going to take it. They have got some really fast guys and some smart kids that make good decisions and make big plays. So this team's just going to get better and better as the season goes on. And it's the same situation that every team deals with, particularly at this level of football, is can you keep enough guys healthy? And they've already had some injuries to deal with at the beginning of the season, so they've got to figure out a way to keep guys on the field. But if they can do that, they're going to win a lot of football games this year.
And Bazarski's not suiting up for Ridgeland either. That guy was a handful. He's not a Panther. He's an Eagle. So they're done with him for this season. I think you're going to see Darlington continue to grow.
All right, man. Well, let's pick another game. That one we were just talking about, but I think you could probably tell which way we're leaning. in that one? Well, it's going to be the Christian Heritage Lions going up against the Pepperell Dragons down in Lindale. Series history-wise, well, it's pretty short. The Lions lead at 1-0, won last season 21-14, and Ian, I think it was one of those games, and there were several last year that kind of got away from Pepperell, and it was probably one of those situations they felt like they probably should have won and didn't. And so this year is one of those years where they're trying to kind of right some of those things. And do you think they're going to be able to do that with the milk jugs going, the dragon fired up, the cannon going off, all the stuff you get at those games in Lindale, which make it super exciting?
Right. And again, you know, you're asking yourself if you're buying or selling a team's stock at this point. You look at the Christian Heritage record, and it's 0-2, but those were against some good teams. So let's not write the Lions off. They're going to come to town ready to play. This is a program that has continued to have success. So don't look at their record and write them off. The Dragons need to be ready for Christian Heritage's best shot. They're going to come to Lindale expecting to win. But I think, I mentioned this in the first segment, that win at Adairsville is huge for the psyche of this Dragons team. To come back and get that win and start understanding what it takes to get the W's. I think you're going to see Moss Tant and Sam Ross handle business here at home, and I think it'll be close, but I like the Dragons to win.
Well, it is going to be interesting, as you mentioned. One of the interesting storylines about this matchup is obviously going to be the head coach over at Christian Heritage, Frank Barden. People around here know that name. He was at Cartersville, won a state championship in 1999. As recently as 2022, led St. Francis, which no longer has a football program anymore.
Wow.
For him the other day. Led that squad down to the semifinals the season before he came to Christian Heritage. So they're in great hands in terms of coaching experience, and then the other people that are involved in that athletic program down there, bring a lot to the table. So I feel like this is going to be a competitive team, even though I don't really know much about their personnel. But they're going to be well coached. But I'm with you. This Dragons team, I think that, for them to see that they can get the job done against a good team on the road like they were and that sort of thing, that's a confidence builder. And I think they're going to build some momentum from that. So I look for the Pepperell Dragons to have a winning record after this weekend concludes. I think they get one done at home, and I think that's going to be a tremendous environment.
I do too.
For a football game. They're going to be super excited, especially picking up the W coming up this weekend. So we're on the same page with that one. One more to pick, and then we'll tell you about our coverage and wrap up because we're rapidly starting to run down on time. But this is a matchup that has become quite a rivalry, and I know people really look forward to this every year, although for the last few years, it's been a little bit one-sided to a certain degree. Carrollton's won the last three. They lead the series 7-4. Carrollton's off to 2-0 start. They've come up with a pretty couple of whopping victories in their first couple of games. Rome is 0-1, obviously played a very good team right out of the gate in Creekside in the Corky Kell Classic. Had a big lead early in the game. That slipped, and they ended up losing that game. Had a bye week last week, and you got to know that John Reed and his players are chomping at the bit to get back out on the field and try to win a football game. But it is not going to be an easy task. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I'm in line with you. It's a tough one to call. Joey King's going to have a loaded roster even without Juju coming back at quarterback. He's out in Boulder. I don't know if we'll see him Friday night when they take on the Yellow Jackets, but I imagine he's going to be the guy under center out there. We'll see.
I actually saw a report yesterday that he is not going to be the starting quarterback, that they'll probably see him at some point during the game, but they are using the guy that they got that was at Tennessee a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I forget his name.
Interesting.
But that's what Dion says, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, interesting. Well, he's not going to be lining up against the Wolves, which is a good thing for them. And they get this one at Barron Stadium, which is always helpful down there between the rivers. But I think they're going to be on the prowl, man. They're going to be ready. They're going to be motivated. They've had an extra week to prepare for this one. But I'm going to take the Trojans. I hate to say that. It's not often a John Reed team starts 0-2, and he'll have them ready. But I just feel like the Trojans, they're a football factory, and I think at the end of the day they're going to find a way to pull away at some point in this game. Hate to pick against the Wolves, but I'm doing it.
I do too, and I'll just go ahead and say I'm going to pick Carrollton in this game as well. However, when you look at the talent that this Rome has with some of their playmakers, quarterback is fantastic, McPherson. Wide receiver J.J. Winston, Darnell Collins, Georgia Tech commits. Super excited about that as a Georgia Tech fan.
Heck yeah.
Got some size and ability up front. I met one of their players the other day. I didn't want to share that on the show, but Nasir Jones was in my neighborhood, and they were selling those discount cards. And he started walking over to me with his Rome jersey on, about 6'5", 300 pounds. And I'm like, yes, sir, I'll take one of those. But I found out later he's a Coastal Carolina commit, really polite young man, and, boy, just a massive dude. So we know that Rome has some size. So they've got some ingredients that I think they can compete in this game, but not enough currently for me to pick them. I hope Rome wins.
I do too.
They could win. We may find out that they pulled the upset at the end of the night. But I'm going to take Carrollton in this game because I just think the depth situation there is a little bit in their favor. But we'll see what happens, man. It's at Barron Stadium.
It is.
It's going to be rocking.
It is.
It's going to have the home crowd on their side. So I hope Rome is able to pull off the W.
Yeah, I hope everybody shows up, and I hope you and I are both wrong on that one. I'll gladly take the loss on the score sheet.
Me too, man. Me too. Well, all merchie's off this weekend. Rockmart Yellow Jackets are off. We do want to let you know coming up at 7 o'clock this evening, if you happen to be watching live on a Wednesday, we've got the Coach Grove Show coming up after this. Same thing can be said, though, on the radio because we air the Coach Grove Show directly after the radio edition of this on Friday nights. Speaking of Friday night, at 6:15 this Friday, it's This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, followed by at 6:45 the Coach Grove Show. We are thankfully going live from Chris Hunter Stadium this week, back at home after 2 weeks on the road as the Darlington Tigers get ready to take on the Ridgeland Panthers. Airtime from Chris Hunter Stadium, 7:15. Brief pregame at 7:30, Toe Meets Leather. After the Darlington game, it's the Rome Orthopedic Center High School Football Scoreboard Show with Lynn and Austin Butler, father-son team. And you, call them up, talk to them after the games at 706-232-7767. Well, Ian, it's been fun picking with you. In review, we had one difference.
One difference,
correct?
that's right.
Yeah.
You took Model, I took Coosa, so we'll see what happens.
County rivalry could be the difference of whether we have a tie or if I have a 2-game lead coming out of this weekend. All right, well, that puts a wrap on the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football.
This has been another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. We appreciate you tuning in and invite you to tune in again next week. Please like, share, and subscribe.